Mga baho ng National Telecommunications Commission, isa-isa nang naglalabasan. Ito ang naging komento ng maraming netizens sa viral hearing sa Kongreso kung saan ginisa ni Deputy Speaker or former Deputy Speaker Rodante Marcoleta ang NTC Chairman na si Cordova matapos hindi patawan ng parusa ang ABSCBN kahit 2 taon na nagmula nang maipasara ang media giant. Pero bago ang lahat, kung hindi ka pa nakakapag-subscribe sa aking channel, please do subscribe at click notification bell para mas lagi kang updated sa mga susunod kong mga videos. Sa nasabing pagpupulong ng Kongreso, walang awat na pinuntiryan ni Congressman Rodante Marcoleta ang NTC kung bakit walang kaso ang Kapamilya Network kahit nakabalandra na ang samot-saring violation na iginiit ng ABS-CBN sa naging paglilitis noon ng nasabing mababang kapulungan. Pinatunayan mismo ng ilang mambabatas na hindi lamang sa tao lumabag ang ABS-CBN at maging ang 1987 Constitutions ay nilabag rin ng nasabing media giant, kaya't mayroon itong pagkakautang sa gobyerno na hindi bababa sa 2.16 trillion pesos na mismo kay Marcoleta. Nakapagtataka kung bakit sa limpak-limpak na kaso ng Kapamilya Network, bakit ni isang case ay hindi nasampahan ang Lopez Group of Company. Hindi kaya't may nakakatanggap na suhol o padulas sa loob ng ahensya dahil nakapagtataka raw talaga na hindi gumalaw ang kaso ng ABS-CBN sa nakalipas na 2 taon. Kaya si Rodante Marcoleta ng Sagip Party List Representatives ang mismong humarap sa NTC mula sa Germany at binigyan ng ultimatum para kasuhan ang media giant at ipatigil ang mangyayaring merge ng ABS-CBN at TV5 ay sila ang malilintikan. Narito ang full video.
Refers to the ability to substantially influence or direct the action or decision of an entity, whether by contract, agency, or otherwise. Yun po bang pagkakabili ng substantial stocks ng ABS-CBN, ng TV5? Hindi po ba nagbibigay ng substantial control yun sapagkat ayon sa deal nila, Mr. Chair, ang ABS-CBN na po ang gagawa ng content. Wala na pong gagawing content ang TV5 at ang TV5 magbo-broadcast na lang. Bakit po nagkaganon? Parang mababiolate po yung Section 10 ng TV5 sapagkat yung rights and privileges na nakuha po dahil nakakuha na siya ng control, hindi po nila ipinagpaalam. Nasa Section 10 po yan, Mr. Chair. At yung word na merge dun sa Section 10 po, it was used in its generic sense, Mr. Chair. Hindi lang mo pinag-uusapan yung technicality ng talagang merger or acquisition. Ang sabi po sa definition na ginawa ng Philippine Commission, kahit na po joint venture, pagka-control ang nangingibabaw, ay kailangan po rin ay makikita rin po natin na control din po yan. At saka kaya ko po sinasabi na kinakailangan makialam ang Philippine Commission, Competition Commission, dahil hindi lamang po dun sa amount ng investment ang pinag-uusapan, Mr. Chair. Bakit po? Dahil po kasi sa Section 14 ng Philippine Competition Commission, kailangan pong tingnan ng PCC yung anti-competitive agreements. Nasa Section 14 po yan. Mandate po niya yan. Kailangan din po niyang makita kung merong abuse of dominant position. Nasa Section 15. Ito pong dalawang sections na to, Mr. Chair, kapag hindi po tiningnan ng Philippine Competition Commission, ito pong dalawang ito have the object or effect of substantially preventing restricting, or lessening competition. Yun po yung gusto nating tingnan. Yung po bang pagkakaroon ng control will have the effect of preventing, restricting, or even lessening competition. Ito po ay alang-alang sa interest ng consumers, Mr. Chair, kaya hindi po maliit na bagay na akala mo bigla na lang sasakay po sa isang may-ari ng prangkisa, kakalimutan lahat ng obligation, hindi na natin titingnan kung yung pagsanib ng dalawang yun makikita mo yung control at ang yung control magkakaroon na po ng monopolya at ang madidisgrasya rito yung interest ng ating mga consumer.
The chance to attend this hearing this afternoon and to give our insights and ideas on this item. Mr. Chair, paano po ang do I proceed? Paano po ang gusto niyo?
What you have to say, you have a copy of the privilege speech.
Yes.
Anything that you'd like to submit or say before this committee?
Okay, yes. Thank you for that. Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Chair. Okay, I would like to inform the honorable committees, that the honorable members of the committee, that the National Telecommunications Commission issued a memorandum order dated 23 June 2022, memorandum order number 36/2022 po yan, ano. Basically po, the memorandum order states that if a franchise holder would enter into a contract, a commercial contract with another entity, that said entity should have no obligations sa outstanding obligations sa national and local governments. So for purposes of this, bago po namin aprubahan ng isang commercial agreement entered into na may jurisdiction po ang National Telecommunications Commission, ay hihingi po muna kami ng clearances dun po sa kakontrata ng franchise holder, and that includes clearances from the Department of Finance. Nandyan po kasi ang Bureau of Internal Revenue, nandyan din po ang Bureau of Customs, and magbibigay din po kami ng clearance kung wala pong pending sa amin na babayarin or admin case, and hihingi rin po kami ng clearance from the Securities and Exchange Commission. And binanggit ko rin po kanina na kailangan din po ng clearance from the local government units. Kunwari po ba, meron po bang utang itong entity na to or corporation na to sa local government in the form of local taxes or real property taxes? Bayad po ba siya sa kanyang amilyar? Yan po ang aming mga hihingin po na mga clearances. Ang dahilan po niyan is alam niyo po naman, we would want to enforce collection dahil kailangan po ng ating gobyerno ng collection, lalo na po because of the pandemic. So meron po tayong mga emergency expenses na kailangan po ng tulong ng ating pamahalaan. That's why we came up with this memorandum order. So kung ito po ay itutuloy ng TV5, ang kanila pong transaction with ABSCBN, then we would ask for the said clearances to be submitted to the NTC before we can approve po the commercial agreement that they entered in. Yun po ang ang basis po namin would be the memorandum order that we issued last June 23, 2022.
So yun lang ang mo.
Salamat po.
Meron ko bang
Yes. Ano po yun, Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair, can you repeat po? Sorry po, hindi ko po na.
Will you be submitting any memorandum order to mga
Yes. Yes,
committee nito?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Opo, Opo, we will submit po our copy of the memorandum order to the honorable committees for your consideration. Salamat.
Salamat. Now, are you done, Mr. Cordova?
Ano lang po, maybe an additional item po, ano. There is a pending case po sa NTC against ABSCBN dahil po may violations ang ABS-CBN sa amin noon pong 2020 kung saan po ay nag pay-per-view without authority from the commission. So yun po ang isang violation na kailangan po muna namin matapos bago po kami makapagbigay ng clearance. Yan po ay isang kaso na pending po sa amin. Yun po, Your Honors. If the honorable committee wants, we can also submit a copy of that pending case before our office.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, may I ask the Honorable Chairman of the NTC if the other violations established during the hearing of the renewal of franchise of ABS-CBN are not considered violations, because he only mentioned the violations in connection with the pay-per-view committed by ABS-CBN for the lack of authority of what we call the conditional access system. Did he not consider also the violations like the lack of permit of the encryptment of the content and the encryption of the signal is also a violation, and it lasted for several years, not only weeks and days, Mr. Chair. It does not permit for the digital broadcast of its 11 channels, Mr. Chair. Also, ABS-CBN violated the cease and desist order. It also sold millions of black boxes throughout the land, because without which the encrypted content cannot be viewed by our people. That is the reason why they violated their free-to-air contracts. These violations, Mr. Chair, that's why I'm asking the Honorable Chairman, because he should have included them in the context of violations as per the provision of the Public Service Act, which is 200 pesos per day per violation, Mr. Chair. As a matter of fact, I remember telling the NTC chairman if he has already computed all the violations established during the hearing, and I was told initially that the amount of the violation, Mr. Chair, is insignificant. Of course, I beg to disagree with him, because I made a computation, a detailed computation of all these detailed violations, and I came up with trillion peso violation, Mr. Chair. So if he's talking only of the pay-per-view violations, I don't think that is complete. May I ask the comment of the NTC Commissioner, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chairman, can I respond? Yes, Mr. Chairman, yung po mga binanggit na violations po ni Congressman Marcoleta, we will look into it per detail po yun, ano, kasi po we cannot say that it's a violation right now or hindi. Depende po yan dun sa magiging labas po ng aming investigation, kasi po kakaroon po yan ng notice and hearing po sa concerned na corporation.
Mr. Cordova, sinabi ko naman sa iyo noon na umpisahan mo ng usisain at imbestigahan. Matagal na yun eh. 2020 pa yun. 2 taon ang nakakaraan. Bakit naman hindi mo kasi sinimulan?
Actually,
ang pagkakaalam ko dyan, alam nyo rin na walang... You will admit that there is no permit dun sa encryption ng signal. Wala ring permit dun sa encryption ng mga contents. Hindi ba tama yun, Mr. NTC, Commissioner?
Opo, yun pong case na final sa amin ay tungkol po doon, sir. Yun po yung encryption po.
But motu proprio, you can investigate already, because that is the reason why the franchise was not reviewed in the first place. wala siyang permit for digital broadcast. At ito hindi lang days, hindi weeks, hindi months. It lasted for several years, Mr. Chair. At nakita mo rin yung when they migrated from analog to digital contents. Hindi ba nagkaroon sila ng demonstration, Mr. Commissioner? At you only allowed them for 3 months. But the demonstration continued for years, and these are also violations. So, I'm not still mentioning the violations about the PDRs, which is supposed to be the jurisdiction of the Securities and Exchange Commission, as well as the tax evasion schemes that they have employed, Mr. Chairs. Dahil nangako pa ang BIR dito. These are all obligations that the NTC should have investigated in the first place. Kahit naman siguro walang magdemanda o magasunto sa inyong opisina, Mr. Chairman, motu proprio kasi kasama kayo nung inimbestigahan natin yan. At ito'y public knowledge. At ang katotohanan nito, yung binabanggit po ninyong memorandum, Mr. Chair, hindi lang national, meron din po silang local obligations. Sa Quezon City lamang po, you will be surprised, Mr. Chair, na yung pong assessment ng kanilang building at saka kanilang machineries and equipment, broadcast equipment, alam po ba ninyo yung assessment period nila? And 40 years pa po ang basis ng assessment nila eh. 1973 pa po yung iba, ang pinaka-latest 2004, meaning to say, hindi po na-assess yung mga yung building nila at saka yung improvement sa loob, mga equipment, lahat ng ginagamit nila. In other words, yung basis po ng assessment mali na po because bumibili naman po sila ng makabagong equipment because of the technology na mabilis pong lumaki ngayon. Hindi po napupuntahan ng assessment ng assessor office yung mismong opisina ng ABSCBN. Kahit na po yung building official, kailangan po siguro patawag natin sila. Hindi sila pinapapasok doon sa mismong planta o istasyon ng ABS-CBN. Kaya hindi po ma-assess yung equipment, yung mga makinarya nila dyan na binibili nila every year. Ang assessment po ay 1973 pa po. Paano natin makukuha ang tamang buwis kapag hindi nila pinapapasok ang assessor sa kanilang opisina? Pati po yung pinakamatas na transmitter. Kailangan po malaman nito, Mr. NTC Commissioner. Yung pong transmitter ng ABS-CBN, wala pong building permit yun. Paano po nangyari yan? Ito po lahat ay obligation. Kaya nga po ang sinasabi natin dito, kinakailangan ba payagan natin sa kagad na makasakay sa ibang prangkisa nang hindi po nase-settle itong napakaraming mga sagutin na ito? At obligation na taong bayan na po ang nakakaalam nung tayo po ay nagkaroon ng malawakang public hearing dito. Hindi po dapat ganun lang. Kailangan pong masettle muna ito. Bakit hindi muna po nila kasi isettle, ayusin, bayaran ang dapat bayaran? Hindi yung makikisakay ka na lang na parang business as usual na lang, Mr. Chair. Ito po yung board ng aking privilege speech. At kung sinasabi po nila, Mr. Chair, na hindi po merger ito, hindi po acquisition, ito po circumvention lamang Mr. Chair. Alam po ba ninyo, yung IRR po ng Republic Act 10667, ito po yung Philippine Competition Commission. Under Rule 2, letter K, ang sinasabi po niya sa merger refers to the joining of two or more entities or to form a new entity, including joint ventures. Alam po ninyo, for purposes of assessing whether or not there is competition, pinalawak po ng IRR ng Philippine Competition ang definition ng merger para hindi po tayo maging technical lang, para walang makapag-circumvent ng batas. Ang nagsasabi pa po ng iba, hindi naman po acquisition yan, sabi niya. Kaya hindi na dapat magpaalam sa Philippine Competition. Hindi po totoo yun. Alam po ninyo, Mr. Chair, it is not only acquisition that will entail control over an entity because kahit na po, and nandito po sa section sa Section 25 po ng Philippine Competition Commission, sinasabi po rito, Mr. Chair, in determining the control of an entity, the Commission may consider the following. Kung pupunta po tayo sa last sentence nun at idudugtong natin sa letter F, ganito po yung sinasabi. Control exists even when the entity owns one half or less of the voting power of another entity when there exist rights or contracts which confer decisive influence on decisions of the entity. Ang totoo po, doon sa Philippine Competition Commission Act, Mr. Chair, nasa Section 4, dinefine din ang control. Ganon din po, sabi niya sa letter F, control refers to the ability to substantially influence or direct the action or decision of an entity whether by contract, agency, or otherwise. Yun po bang pagkakabili ng substantial stocks ng ABSCBN, ng TV5, hindi po ba nagbibigay ng substantial control yun sapagkat ayon sa deal nila, Mr. Chair, ang ABS-CBN na po ang gagawa ng content. Wala na pong gagawing content ang TV5. At ang TV5 magbo-broadcast na lang. Bakit po nagkaganon? Parang mababiolate po yung Section 10 ng TV5 sapagkat yung rights and privileges na nakuha po dahil nakakuha na siya ng control, hindi po nila ipinagpaalam. Nasa Section 10 po yan, Mr. Chair. At yung word na merge dun sa Section 10 po, it was used in its generic sense, Mr. Chair. Hindi lang mo pinag-uusapan yung technicality ng talagang merger or acquisition. Ang sabi po sa definition na ginawa ng Philippine Commission, kahit na po joint venture, pagka-control ang nangingibabaw, ay kailangan po rin ay makikita rin po natin na control din po yan. At saka kaya ko po sinasabi na kinakailangan makialam ang Philippine Commission, Competition Commission, dahil hindi lamang po dun sa amount ng investment ang pinag-uusapan, Mr. Chair. Bakit po? Dahil po kasi sa Section 14 ng Philippine Competition Commission, kailangan pong tingnan ng PCC yung anti-competitive agreements. Nasa Section 14 po yan. Mandate po niya yan. Kailangan din po niyang makita kung merong abuse of dominant position. Nasa Section 15. Ito pong dalawang sections na to, Mr. Chair, kapag hindi po tiningnan ng Philippine Competition Commission, ito pong dalawang ito have the object or effect of substantially preventing, restricting, or lessening competition. Yun po yung gusto nating tingnan. Yung po bang pagkakaroon ng control will have the effect of preventing, restricting, or even lessening competition. Ito po ay alang-alang sa interest ng consumers, Mr. Chair, kaya hindi po maliit na bagay na akala mo bigla na lang sasakay po sa isang may-ari ng prangkisa, kakalimutan lahat ang obligation. Hindi na natin titingnan kung yung pagsanib ng dalawang yun makikita mo yung control at ang yung control magkakaroon na po ng monopolya at ang madidisgrasya rito yung interest ng ating mga consumers.
Marcoleta?
May I have a rejoinder, Mr. Chair? I'll address the NTC Commissioner.
Yes. Pete. Honorable Marcoleta, you have the floor.
Mr. Commissioner, when you were asked questions from the Honorable Lagman, you were answering in your capacity as the Commissioner of the NTC. Is that correct?
Actually, Your Honor, I was answering as a lawyer, Your Honor, because the questions are general principles of law.
Yes, but you were also answering in the context as the Commissioner of the National Telecommunications Commission.
Yes.
Because as a regulator, it is also your duty to look into the best interest of the parties, which are guarded, which are not guarded, because it's not like two parties without the participation of a regulator, like like a seller and the buyer, or the contracting parties to a marriage. You are a regulator. You're representing the National Telecommunications Commission. That's why you're after the obligations of each parties. For example, in the extrajudicial settlement, Mr. Commissioner, of course, before the extrajudicial settlement is approved, the existing debts of the decedent or the of the estate is first to be settled. Is not Mr. NTC Commissioner?
Yes, Your Honor. Actually, Your Honor, can I add some more details to the answer?
Okay.
Actually, Your Honor, the reason why we issued this memorandum order is because the franchisees, aside from being given a franchise by Congress, is also being given the privilege by the national government to use the frequencies which is owned by the national government. So if they are given the privilege to use such frequencies for commercial purposes, then it is our position that the national government, in this case represented by the NTC, can give conditions to contracts entered into by franchisees and who are given frequencies by the national government.
Thank you. Can I go now back to the NTC, the Commissioner of the PCC, Mr. Chair?
Proceed, please. Please proceed.
Commissioner Bernabe, are you still there?
Yes,
Yeah.
Your Honor.
He's still here.
When I made the submission between Bayanihan 2, Section 4, EEE, in juxtaposition with Section 17 of PCC, did you get the idea that I was trying to ask you not to belabor on the exacting provisions of Bayanihan 2, considering that it was enacted in the context of the pandemic, but maybe to concentrate on the mandate and the mandate of the PCC, which is supposed to be to safeguard and look after the interest of the consumers, which means I was only asking your opinion that between the two laws, even if there is no conflict there, but the overriding idea is not to belabor between the two laws, but concentrate on the very aspect of competition that will be more harshful if not taken as in this particular case. That is the idea that I was trying to convey, Mr. Commissioner, if you get the idea, but not really to conflict the two cases or the two laws for you to answer. Did you get that idea, Mr. Commissioner?
When I took your entire statement, Your Honor, at the conclusion, I was clear in the understanding that what you wanted us to do was to exercise our power to review the transaction. And such power to review is distinct and separate from the power to require notification. The power to require notification is what is amended by Section 4EEE of Bayanihan 2. But the power to review is not amended, and that subsists regardless of Bayanihan 2. And that is my takeaway from understanding in whole your earlier discourse with this representation, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Mr. Commissioner, also, I assume that Congressman, when Congressman Lagman read his letter to the Speaker, I assume that you have understood that completely. You have heard some of the points, not like in one of the points that he raised in his letter. I think he was telling that the agreement or the investment between ABS-CBN and TV5 is not a merger, neither a consolidation, and that is why it is not subject to the review of the Competition Commission. I think that was the gist of his letter, and aside from that, he said that the franchise of TV5 was not violated because that is not a merger. It's a simple partnership and an investment. But did I hear you right when you said that the substantial acquisition of the outstanding stocks of ABS-CBN to you had the character of an acquisition? Did I hear you right say that?
If I may clarify, Your Honor, Mr. Chair, I think the Honorable Congressman Edsel Lagman made 2 points in his letter to the Honorable Speaker. The first is that the deal is not a merger. And I think on that point, we agree with Congressman Lagman. The second point that Congressman Lagman made in his letter is that it is not an acquisition as defined in Section 4 of the PCA. And I understand that his premise for this is because an acquisition as defined must be for the purpose of obtaining control. Now, the determination of control is provided for in the PCA as well. It is in the form of an illustrative list of factors that the Commission has to consider. Now, it may be that while there is a presumption that that control is being acquired if you acquire more than 50% of the voting shares of an entity, there are other factors that you can consider as a Commission when determining the existence of control, and therefore a categorization that a transaction is an acquisition. It is an examination of these other factors which might manifest badges of control that I was referring to when I said that, at least in my own opinion, this transaction would qualify as an acquisition. Now, I do not want to preempt the opinion of my other colleagues in the Commission. We are a collegial body, Your Honor, and they may have their own appreciation of whether or not the transaction manifests badges of acquisition of control which would qualify it as an acquisition. But to my mind, at least personally, there seems to be indications that this qualifies as an acquisition. Now, we do not have a copy of the investment agreement. What we have are the press release from the parties. What we have are the interventions, the notes we have made out of the interventions propounded earlier. And from what has been stated, it would seem that this qualifies, to my mind, as an acquisition. But just to clarify, whether or not it is an acquisition which necessitates notification, that is something which I demur from categorically stating, because I don't think it is an acquisition which is required to be mandatorily notified, Your Honor.
Thank you for that answer, Mr. Commissioner. And in characterizing that it is, in your opinion, an acquisition, it is based on Section 25 of the Charter of PCC. Is that correct?
The application thereof, yes, Your Honor.
Yes. And so you're correct there. I think your opinion jives with my own, because I believe that even if we do not technically classify it as an acquisition, but the badges or signages of control might be there, like the circumstances or situations listed under Section 25 of the Philippine competition law, is something that you should be looking into in the future, Mr. Commissioner. And do you believe that in reviewing Section 10 of the franchise of TV5, because I believe the term merger as utilized in Section 5 of that franchise was used in this generic sense. Because if you will review Section 10, and I think you did already, the substantial acquisition of outstanding stocks of TV5 had the effect of giving to ABSCBN the exercise of the rights and privileges that are prohibited under that particular section of the franchise of TV5. Considering that the enjoyment of the rights and privileges, more particularly the production of content, which is something that can control the entire operation of TV5. That is supposed to be with prior approval of Congress. That was the point that I was trying to raise in the privilege speech, Mr. Commissioner. That is why even if my friend, my good friend and colleague, Congressman Lagman, will technically say that there is no merger, there is no consolidation, but in the context of control, as we have been discussing and as you have elicited, this is really something that the Competition Commission should look into and guard against, because you exist for the interest of the consumers, Mr. Commissioner. That is all, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, Mr. Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Honorable Marcoleta. Due to time constraints, we now would like to suspend our hearing, and if needed in the future, we will call another hearing. I'm sure there are other hearings kasi may mga ibang bills pa na pertaining to this issue. Anyway, I would like to thank the members that are present, and of course, our resource persons from the SEC, PCC, and NTC. So, to end, do I hear a motion to adjourn from a member of the Committee on Franchise? Please proceed. Yes. A motion? Is there a motion? Please unmute your mic.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
There's a motion. The chair hearing no objection. For the Committee on Franchise, this hearing is adjourned.
On the part of the Committee on Trade and Industry, this joint committee hearing is hereby adjourned.
Co-chair Marvin.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chair.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
There being no other speakers, thank you very much. Maraming salamat at magkita-kita po tayo ulit. Thank you very much for your time, and it's truly appreciated.